Good morning, this is Gene. I do want to talk a little bit about the last couple of days about Nick on his show, what he said, and the response that we've seen online from the typical participants. I was going to actually do a video about Charlie Cook and Nick Fuentes because of the text messages that came out. Carly call him a vermin, all that stuff. I want to talk about that because I'm not sure. I might talk about this at the end of this, or maybe I'll do a video later, tomorrow or something. We're a day before Halloween, and we're actually starting to get the weather here. That's like fall here. Overcast, probably 45, 50. Gloomy day. Tomorrow's supposed to be nice and sunny, but it's going to be a little cold here. But I want that. One of the reasons why I left Florida, I think we had to do it for family issues, but I do like having some of the seasons. Living in Florida, you don't really have that. We don't really, just even when it's winter, it's 75 outside, 80. And we always get the sun. There are sometimes, and sometimes I actually miss that a little bit. I also want to say thank you to those who subscribed to my channel the last couple of days, and the comments that I've gotten have been all pretty much positive. Nice to see there are people that are my age that actually watch Nick and have an interesting viewpoint on him. But one of the main reasons I made this channel, other than me recovering from my stroke, be able to talk again. And sometimes you'll see that when I try to talk, I don't do it well. I used to talk pretty well. I'm not going to say at the same level as Nick, but I was a pretty good orator before the first stroke happened. Definitely, I always thought about it. I would go into politics at some point in my life. But things change. You have a kid that, my son had issues, special needs. So, things like that didn't lead to that. So again, thank you for those who subscribed. Thank you for the comments. But one of the other reasons that I actually did this channel was to actually mentor young men. I do it as much as I can around here. I live in a fairly new development. And I will talk about Nick and all that. I'll get to that, but I'm just going to talk about this really quick, and we'll talk to Nick about Nick. This development was started around 2018, maybe 19, and we got our house at that late of 19, before COVID. And you end up seeing a lot of men who don't go to college that are working for different type of companies here that service the stuff, right? And when I have an opportunity to talk to them, I talk about it. I want to see how they feel. And most of them are white. Now, I do live in a very diversified area, but most of the people that I end up seeing, well, the pest guys, some of them are black. They are. But even then, I have tried to have a conversation with them, if they allow me, right? And I always try to understand how they're feeling and how's the environment doing for them, and try to figure out, how they're actually feeling, because I know that things are going on. I have a son who's in his 20s, two of them actually. So I know that it's pretty difficult out there for young men, regardless of your color of your skin. So I it's one of the reasons why I've had this channel, and I try to at least, I'm not mentoring, because who am I? I mean, I do have some life experiences. But I will tell you this, that almost all of them want to have that mentorship. They want people to talk to them. They want older men to sit there and have a conversation with them, because they're kind of afraid of how the future looks. And all I can tell them is just get a skill and you'll be fine. Something that you can take anywhere, and you get to the point you're really good at it, and maybe you can start your own business, and you don't have to worry about the man or anybody else. If you have something that has to be taken care of, whether it's a plumber, or you're working with gas, or if you want to be in the pest control type of situation, carpenters, stuff like that, that can never be, AI is not going to take that stuff over. So that's another reason why I'm on this channel. So there are a couple of people who said that, and it's nice to see some of the young guys are like, oh, you look like Vincent James, who, obviously Vincent James is a lot younger than me. And I said, yeah, we came from probably the same tribe. I have a little more hair than James have. Not a whole lot more, but a little bit more. And it's funny because where he was born, I was around that area. And then where he's moving now, I was there when I had my first kid, was in that area. It's funny. And my middle name is Vincent, and his first name is Vincent. So it's really funny. But what I really like to do is, because if I'd not go to military and stuff, I probably would have been a teacher. It's something in my family that's kind of like handed down. My father was a teacher. Something that we do, and I think that that's something I would have been good at. And I had roles in the military that I had that when I trained in people, I would actually teach them. So I'd be 30, and there'd be an 18 or 19-year-old person, and I would teach them. Now, of course, we didn't get into politics and stuff, but everybody knew on the ops floor where I was politically, and I was on the left back then. I wasn't way on the left, but I was on the left. And most people in the military back then were more on the right. So I was always defending my positions. And things changed throughout the years, and whereas I stayed, most of my belief system stayed pretty much the same, but my party went way to the left. And then other things started happening in my life that allowed me to actually research and figure out who actually runs everything, and then that kind of like changed where I believe. But still, the tenets of my belief system is still here. I believe in classical liberalism, but obviously we just can't have our heads in the ground when shit is going on behind us. So I just want to talk about that. It's a little introduction about the last couple days. I like the comments, and I will try to respond to the ones in the comments. If you watch my videos, I would go ahead and say share it. I would like to get 1,000 subscribers at some time in my life. I never really asked for it, but I would like to at least be in the 4-digit thing. But anyway, the last couple days, Nick has been responding to the criticism or whatever that's happening with his interview with Tucker Carlson. And it was very bad yesterday, and Tuesday was bad. But it's getting worse and worse and worse. And now we have people like Josh Hammer. And I'll just say this, go ahead and watch this, at least watch tonight's or yesterday's, his show on Rumble. These guys are basically saying that Tucker and Nick need to be, what's it say? Annihilated? Neutralized. So we live in this era of rhetoric that becomes violent. Now, again, I don't think words can make you violent, right? I'm like Michael Knowles. I don't think your words make you violent. I think that you as a person, if you take those words and you in your mind says, now I have to do something about it, that's on you. But when somebody that knew Charlie Kirk, that is a Jew donor who has a book that basically says that all the Western world is based on Jewish stuff, that clearly is pro-Israel before America first, that sits there and just spurgs on Twitter for 18 pages about how bad Nick is, that we have to annihilate these guys or neutralize the threat of Tucker Carlson, who's just like your uncle down the road that has different type of opinions that you might have, that you would always go over there and still have barbecue with him because he's not violent at all. Or Nick, who's just happened to be a young man that says, I'm noticing something and this is not good, that you need to stop it right there. So what I want to talk about is this, and as great as they think they are, because they'll tell you that. These people will say, our IQ is higher than everybody else. We have a higher deviation above white people, let's say. Now, it's only a small part of Semitic people that have that, and we're not really sure that they're Semites. They look like Europeans, but overall, their IQ is a little bit higher than the average white guy, let's say, in Europe or even the United States. And they just want to continually tell us, and they'll say, Freud this, and Einstein this, and these are all frauds, by the way. Or all the guys that won the Nobel Prize or something like that for science or something like that, they're always Jews and stuff like that. They're just smart, so much smarter than us. But what their biggest Achilles heel has always been that they promote that all the time. And in broad daylight, they say just stupid shit that says, of course, Gentiles could be herded around, that they're below us, or they'll just. Or when things don't go their way, they just spurg online and they whine and complain and they ask everybody, all these different organizations, which they end up running, to do something about it. Now, of course, Joshua Hammer is not going to say that that's not what he meant. He didn't mean go out and shoot Tucker or Nick, but he's saying neutralize it or we have to censor it again. Now, we already did this with Nick, right? And I said this a couple days ago, I think what Jason Whitlock said, and yeah, I think Nick even kind of said it. He said, oh, I don't want this to fuck up. Nick kind of said the same thing. He said that they stopped him before he actually could develop, before what they did. They went after him. And Jason Whitlock said that he was in the womb with these ideas, and they liked the ideas until they didn't like the ideas, and then they aborted them. They tried to abort them, and they couldn't do it because Nick is too powerful, I guess. But Nick knew 7, 8 years ago that his ideas would win the day. Because you can't sit there and devalue and disparage young white men who have never done anything, but you're going to blame them for everything that happened 200 years ago. People like me, guys at my age, and again, I'm a lot closer to being a boomer, a couple years from being a boomer, than being at Nick age or even Vincent James's age. So obviously we come from different backgrounds, but I'm a Generation X. We're the guys that actually did go outside and take water from hoses that we lived basically on our own. Our parents would kick us out of work or out of house. This is all true. So we're people that came from the book ups type of dude, but for a long time that we were duped as well. And I talked about this to my wife about it. There was a fundamental effort to instill this white guilt narrative for men, especially because back when I was growing up, obviously we ran everything. And this is really before the women's movement really even started. There was waves of it. And it kind of like 70s and 80s, it really got exploded. But there was this, we had to talk about the Native Americans, which you should talk about our history. We had to talk about the Holocaust. We had to talk about slavery. And it's fine. You could talk about this, and you could talk about it from a unbiased thing. But what they did in the classrooms, in the textbooks, was blame a certain group of people, to be responsible for all of it worldwide. And it had to be white people. Because we colonized, and this happened under their watch. Even though when you first, surfacely, you go down and you actually go down the rabbit hole, we realize who actually controlled all this stuff. It's the same people that are having way too much control right now. Now, we should talk about this, and people get upset about this. I know that DeSantis did something in Florida, and everybody's like, we're not going to talk about slavery anymore. Of course we are, because everybody still thinks it's the big original sin of this country. And they get people on TikTok, these white or black people saying that the only people that could survive slavery were black people. And I'm like, okay, why do I have to do this? I mean, why would a slave owner buy a slave and then kill him? I'm not saying that what slavery is good. I'm not saying it, but clearly they had to feed them and give them shelter. So because they had to do the work. Again, you shouldn't do it. You shouldn't do it in any race shouldn't do it to anybody else, and everybody did. But it's like, well, we survived it because of that. Well, the only reason you survived it is because the slave owners didn't kill you. Again, it was wrong. It's like Holocaust, and interning Jews and people against the state was wrong. Us interning Japanese were wrong, but people never want us to go down. And you want to talk about the surface level? Fine, right? But what they started doing when I went through school is they started blaming Western civilization and white people, and they kept saying stolen land. All this stuff started when I was going through school. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And people went to universities and they kept pushing this into that, and it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it kept going. And all the people that ran all this stuff, these NGOs and stuff, were the same people. So when the internet became what it became, and YouTube became kind of the Wild West of the public square, that right then they tried to stop any type of dissent when shit would come out. And they would show themselves right away how quickly they would be upset about it. And we're seeing it now. And what's very concerning to me is that your people out there that claims to be Christians are part of this cabal that's going after people that are just having conversations. I mean, when I was growing up in the 80s and stuff, we had David Cole, we had David Irving, we had other people, the revisionists of the Holocaust would be on Donahue. in the morning, and they'd be talking about it. And sometimes it'd get heated, right? And people would be like, this, and this. But they had to have a conversation, and we just lost all that, especially when the internet got to where it was. Because when you started going down, you realize, well, there's a lot more to this. I don't want to go into a whole thing about the Holocaust here, but I'm just saying this is how it is. And what you're seeing now is they know the game is up. And if you watch Nick's from last night, you'll see that. He's like, they know the game is up, and they're just whatever they can do to whip up the older men, the boomers and stuff that still believe this shit. There's a guy that I knew in the military that he's sitting there saying that Nick Fuentes is this and this and this on his Facebook thing. And I'm like, yeah, did Nick say some things that would be offensive to people? Yeah, but we did it all the time when I was growing up. It's just, anyway, the point I'm trying to make is that they have a tell. They have a Achilles heel that they can't sit there and allow it to happen, just to blow off, to blow over. They have to attack, because that they've done that for years and years, and they use words like sexist, racist, homophobic, Islamophobic, everything like that. And I just want to tell you this, it's not about, if it has to be about a Jewish person, they run all of this. The NGOs, the groups are all run by them because they believe, and I think there's some truth to this. And if I was a Jewish person and I'm like, I grew up thinking this, that people that look like me have been trying to oppress them forever, that maybe they have a reason to feel that they feel how they feel. But it doesn't mean that they should have control of our country, right? So I understand it to a point. The problem is they have these people that have so much money that they're only doing it for that, and they want more power. They're not doing it because the normal Jewish person that's just going to work every day, they're not doing it for them. They want to keep their power that they have, and they use their rituals to continue to have these, the rituals what I'm talking about. You got to go and pray at the Wailing Wall and all that shit. This shit needs to stop. And the thing is that Nick knew that what those ideas would filter out, because truth is the idea. Everything that he really talks about is truthful. So, but the tell that they have is they continually get upset, and they use these words to stop it. They kept doing it, right? They would stop it, like the Me Too. All that was run by them. And it's like the same thing, how to stop a white man, to stop. Use those words, towards those words. And eventually, the new generation came back and said, I don't care about shit like that. I know that I'm not racist. Or, people like Nick was radicalized. No, Nick has been the same person he's been pretty much for all these years. And it was something that we all kind of like thought about in the 60s and the 70s when the country was 90% white. So it's this idea that this country is a melting pot. Yeah, of course it was for white people. People don't want to hear that. Until 1965, this country was a melting pot for white culture from around Europe to come there. And then after all that, we started to get people from the third world to come in, and it kind of changed things. And the question is, do you want to deserve or preserve what it was before, or what it means to be, or do you care, or do you want the multicultural cultural future? And if they were all just under the same value system, okay. But the problem is, and getting back to this, is there 2% of the population, some of them still believe that they're going to be rounded up and killed because of the Holocaust. I mean, they've been duped as much as Gentiles have been about that whole thing. So they believe that as well. So they have to continually give money to Israel and have to say that that's their home and all that stuff. But they're not America first. And I think that all that Nick is trying to say is, if you're not here to be America first, we don't need you to be here. Now, again, I would ask you guys just to watch what he says. He's a lot better at me saying it. But basically how he feels, I feel the same. But they have this tell. And right away, after the Tucker thing, if you go on Twitter, all that shit was going to come out. And he called it the 7,000 Club. They all get money from Israel for doing that. And eventually, that money probably comes from the government here. So, and these people that I watch, I've been subscribing on their channel for years. Officer Tatum, right? And he's all of a sudden changed. But 18 months ago, he was going down the Jewish thing. He was looking at that stuff. He was like, that's just interesting. Same with Jason Whitlock. Same thing. Now, Jason Whitlock hasn't come back and defended the Jews. But it's as smart as they are. It's like the symbolization is always there, and it's like satanic things is they still put stuff out in front of you, right? So the symbols are always there, and there are some of them are spawns of that. They just are. It's something that they are intrinsically they have to be that way. They have to squeal all the time and say it's our you can't say this about us, and you can, no matter what it is, it's all anti-Semitic. If I just sit there and say, why is Ron DeSantis going to Israel to sign a bill that's going to affect people in Florida? And people say, why are you being anti-Semitic? That's not anti-Semitic. So anyway, again, thank you guys for watching my video. I don't want to talk forever about this. I do want to do that video about Charlie and Nick. And I'll just say this before I go. About 18 months ago, I was at that point, and I didn't know all the stuff that Charlie was saying about Nick, and that he was basically trying to stop Nick from being where he is today. And it's unfortunate that that's a character flaw on Charlie. Hopefully he shouldn't have done that. And again, but I wasn't a big, huge fan of Charlie back then because I was always on Nick's side, the Groypers and all that, because he needs answers those questions. But I knew that there was a change, that Charlie had done that. I didn't realize it a couple months ago. He basically called Nick a vermin. I mean, what does that mean? I'm not going to say it changed my issues with him, but again, maybe he couldn't deal with it. The fact that those guys were always at his things and he didn't like it or whatever, or he thought maybe his form of Christianity was better. We have that in the Christian side as well. But I still think, and Nick actually said it, he thinks at some point that them guys would have been, at some point they would have to sit down and talk. And I guess I'm going to talk about it since I'm here. It was clear that those two were going to talk. And they were the future of the right wing. They're fairly close in age. Obviously, Charlie's a little bit older, and he had a family and all that stuff. So he had that part, and he could talk to Nick and say, this is what's more important, stuff like that. And what Carter kind of did as well. But eventually that's where we were going. And even the guy, they did this to J.D. Vance last night. They said, clearly Nick has been right, and they pushed everything to these things. And they're going to have to answer questions when they're doing these turning point things. They're going to have these groypers going to come out and ask these same questions because everything, the Overton window has come to Nick. And even J.D. Vance has to answer this now because young men could decide the next 3 or 4 national elections, and they can't turn their back on them, right? And the thing is, you can turn your back on something if you fundamentally don't agree. The thing is that the movement that Nick has is true. It's absolutely true. You take off the rough edges of it, it's what we all believed when we were growing up. Of course this country was made by white people. Did we do something that was not good in some things? Yeah. Did we atone for that? Yeah. Because we're good people. We do things like that. But it's still a country that was for white people. Anyway, and black people because they were here at the formation as well. But anyway, I will go probably more deeper into this later on, maybe. Depends how I feel about it. But the thing is, they were going to be the figureheads of going forward in the movement. And Charlie at some point would have sat down with Nick. Now, I'll just say this again. It's not great that Carly was killed, but what it did do is get us where we are now, right? And I hate seeing that because I love the man later in his life, what he was doing. I don't think that Nick would be able to go on these shows without that happening. And I don't know if that's good or bad, but I think that everybody understands now he's the future in the right wing. And I would have liked to have both of them there at the same time as a balance against each other. And I think they could have done things. And even though Nick said I didn't like him, he didn't like me, at some point they would have had to sat down. Even though that he was going through a generational run before he was shot, now it's kind of like different to a different level. And they would have to sit down. And again, I will continually say this, Matt Walsh, listen to what Nick has to say. You're smart enough, you can go out on your own, you can do your own thing. You can say the same thing, but don't be under the auspice of the people that are sitting there on these shows basically saying, as a Christian, you're wrong about things like this. Same thing with Michael Knowles. I'll do it a lot more gracefully than Nick does. You've got to get underneath that. You just got to, because that's where we're going. You're in your 40s and 50s and all that shit, or getting close to 40s. Nick is in the 20s, right? That's going to take the right wing going forward. It's not going to be you guys. You could be there. You could be mentors to guys like this. You can tell them, hey, maybe this is a little bit too out there. But we're in a war. We're in a war right now, and we have to get the soul of our country back, and what that really means. So you need to get off the fucking off the toilet, man, both of you. All right, I'm going to stop right there. You guys have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you later, maybe tomorrow. But I'll just let you talk to you guys later. Bye.